set. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Okay. So we've been walking through the Sermon on the Mount, and we've been looking at, of course, the teachings of Jesus and what Jesus says. And Jesus typically, he goes back and he looks at things that have been said before, and then he goes beyond that even to look at the heart. So today, if you can see behind me, it doesn't show up super well, but you can see that it says retaliation behind me. And we all probably have some stories, some experiences where this holds true, that there's some sort of retaliatory thing that needs to happen. Now, let me tell you about a time that this happened to me. I was in Bible school at the time. I was at Bible college, and we decided that it would be a good idea to prank the girls' dorm. I thought it was a good idea. So we started with shaving cream bombs, which they were watching a movie and that night, and what we did, I shouldn't actually tell you how this works, but anyways, we threw these shaving cream bombs in there. What they do is they spin and it shoots shaving cream everywhere, and of course they're watching a movie, and at the time we hear screaming and we're laughing and we think it's hilarious, and it's all good, and they kind of realized it was us, wasn't quite sure. So we're waiting. We're like, are they going to do anything? Nothing really happens. We're like, seems like we're okay. So the next day, nothing's going on, and we find these two salamanders. And they're just, scooting around. We're like, we should take these and we should release them in their dorm as well, because that would be fun. So we do that. We take them and we put them in their dorm. We're like, this is great. Like, they're not even doing anything. This is fantastic. The next day, the girls come and they say, hey guys, guess what? And we're like, hey, what? We baked some cookies for you guys. And we're like, that's wonderful. And I'm like, guys, I don't think we should really trust those. A couple guys eat them and they didn't feel so good later. And we find out that, of course, the salamanders were baked into the cookies. So things are starting to escalate a little bit. So we're like, well, that's no fun. So around Briarcrest, there is lots of little snakes, like little garter snakes. So we found a few of those. We're like, this is epic. So we threw a couple of those in there. We're like, let's make this get a little bit better, right? Nothing happens for a few days. We're like, wow, this is crazy. Then all of a sudden we notice that there's this really bad smell in our foyer. And we're like, why does it smell so bad? And we can't figure it out, and we can't figure it out, and we can't figure it out. And a week goes by, and we're like, man, it smells bad. Like, what is going on? There's a box under the stairs. We take the box out. We open up the box. What's in the box? No, a dead coyote is in the box. We're like, how did they find a dead coyote? And put it under our stairs and let it rot for like a week. We're like, that's nasty. So then me and my buddy were like, hey, we need to really get them back this time. So we planned this perfect plot. We're going to sneak in at night. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all their shower curtains and take down all their bathroom stalls. Therefore, when they go to the bathroom, they'll have to sit right beside each other and there's no privacy at all. So we sneak in there and we do this. We take them all and we hide them in the storage room. Briarcrest, if you're getting this, I promise it didn't happen. Probably nobody from Briarcrest is ever going to watch this. I probably should have been suspended a number of times, but hey, that's okay. So we do this. And they're like, okay, like this is the ultimate. And of course, the next morning at breakfast, they're all talking about this. Hey, like they get up to use the bathroom and go for showers, and they're all talking about this. And like, I'm trying to keep a straight face. And like, who did this? And like our resident director, so that's the person that like looks over the dorms. He pulls me and this other guy aside, and he says, hey, like, do you guys have any idea what happened last night? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, did you hear what happened in the girls' dorm? I'm like, why would I know anything that happened in the girls' dorm? I don't go in the girls' dorm. I'm a guy, right? So, and then eventually they're like, well, we heard you had something to do with it. I'm like, why would you think a thing like that? And this went on for a while, and then, eventually they said, okay, well, we're going to put the things back, and whatever's going on between you guys needs to stop. And we're like, yeah, okay. Right? Needless to say, though, you can see how easy escalation happens in retaliation. And this is where you're going to see, right as we get into the passage here in Matthew 5, 38 to 42. If you got your Bibles, you can turn there. It'll also be on the screen behind me. But this is where you see, right? Jesus says, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And you may be thinking like, well, that's retaliation. But Notice how in the passage, and we're going to see these in the Old Testament passage as well, a lot of us think, well, that's retaliation. Why would God actually give this idea of retaliation? But notice what it says. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't say escalate. But what normally happens in retaliation? We want to escalate. Right? And I can give like numerous examples of this. I mean, camp even, the same thing happens. Right? It's like the pranks escalate. And it's like, okay, we did this, but now we got to one-up them. We got to one-up that. And here, even in the Old Testament, the whole point here is that it wouldn't escalate. But we also have to get to the heart of retaliation, which we'll get there. But there's this idea like, oh, we got to escalate. We got to make things worse. And of course, this comes from Old Testament law. And of course, Jesus says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn him the other. Also, we'll come back to this verse in just a second. But let's look at what Jesus is talking about here. From Exodus 21:24, he says, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. What do you notice in this passage? If I take your eye, you do what? You take mine. If I take your tooth, you take my tooth, right? Like it goes back and forth. You take my hand, I take yours. But notice how it doesn't escalate, where it's like, hey, if you take my eye, I take both yours. It doesn't escalate, right? We see the same thing happen here in Leviticus 24:20, fracture for fracture. So you break my bones, I'll break your bones, right? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, whatever injury has been given a person shall be given to him. Notice how it's the same across the board. There is no escalation, right? And we're not done yet. Deuteronomy 19:21. Your eye shall not pity, it shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. You see the same thing over and over again, and this is what Jesus was referring to. But notice how in all of these things, there is zero escalation. Right? It stays the same across the board. There is no change in it. It is the same. And this law actually was given to restrain vengeance, not encourage it. And you may be thinking, well, hang on a second. Isn't that vengeance? Well, no. It's like you took this. The equal payment for that is the same. It's not meant for vengeance. In fact, God put this there so it wouldn't escalate, so vengeance wouldn't become a big thing, right? It wasn't about vengeance. And of course, in the ancient world, retaliation escalated really quickly. But this isn't really that different from today, right? You'd be amazed at how quickly things can happen right away. You see it over and over again, where one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden we have a big issue, right? And Jesus, of course, wants to look at this, and this was judicial. So this was done by the courts. This wasn't just like, oh, well, he took my hands, so now I'm going to go over there and take his hands. This was actually done through the courts, right? It was judicial. So you didn't just go and get your vengeance back. It was done judicial. And Jesus takes that principle and he's saying, hey, like, guys, this isn't meant for personal justification for revenge. Where lots of people will take this passage, they'll bend it out of its context and say, well, this is actually meant for revenge. It's meant for personal revenge. That's what is there. You do this to me, I do this to you. Hey, like that's what it's all about. But then when we look back on verse 19, right? So let's just back this up really quick. On verse 39, he says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And you may be thinking, well, what is Jesus doing here? What is he getting at? Why would he say this? Right? And we don't want to misunderstand what Jesus is saying. Jesus is not forbidding all forms of resisting evil. He's not saying, like, if there's evil happening that you should not resist that. That's not what he's getting at. In fact, the purpose here, as you're going to see, it says, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other cheek too. Now, again, this is often misunderstood. We see this like, well, if you slap me, I slap you back. Right? That's not what it's at. So typically, again, if you look at ancient times, this is why context is so important in so many things. Context matters so much. Back then, it would typically be a backhanded slap, and the reason for the backhanded slap was an insult. It was meant to be an insult against you. It'd be a backhanded slap. It wasn't just like, okay, you punch me, I punch you back. Like, that's, again, not what's happening here. Right? This is more so about the insult, because typically when we're insulted, what is the first thing that we want to do? Oh, my mic is making some issues here. What is the first thing we want to do? Yeah, kiss him. There's something wrong with you. I think my mic is dying. Yep, it's red. Low battery. I'll turn that off for now. Jim, got another battery back there? 2 AA's. So typically, what would you do? You get your batteries. See if these work. All right. We'll see if these ones work better. That way I don't have to strain my voice quite as hard. We're good. All right. Better? Better. So this isn't about like resisting any sort of evil at all, right? Like, so, but typically with an insult, you return insult for insult, right? Somebody insults me, I'm going to insult them back. In fact, usually I want to find something that's a greater insult to them, and then they insult you back, and it escalates quickly, and usually you go from verbal insults to what? Yeah, to actually get into a fight, right? And then that fight escalates, and then after that happens too, what typically happens? Usually after that all happens, you're like, oh yeah, that person's all good now, I see him on the street, I'm going to wave to him, I'm going to be like, yeah, you're the best. What happens after that? Every time you see that person, there's bitterness, there's hatred, there's, right? You're like, oh, that person, I can't stand that person. Right? And you see how this builds, right? And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that you see this build really quickly, but Jesus is not forbidding all forms of resisting evil. In fact, you're going to see a few times. We'll get to there. I got to skip through these ones quick. Romans 13, 1-4, right? Here's a really interesting one, especially in our times. It says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. And you may be like, I don't like this passage already. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Now, you may be thinking, well, doesn't this passage right here say that we should not resist any sort of form of the government at all? Right? Because you look at that, you're like, hey, every person's supposed to be subject to the governing authorities. But, again, it's within context. If the governing authorities is going and trying to get us to do things that are unbiblical, that go against what God's word is, this doesn't hold true anymore. And you're actually going to see points where Paul, too, will also push back, and Jesus pushes back against authorities as well. But here's the common context that, yes, we are supposed to be subject to our governing authorities, right? It continues on. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities, resist what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. So, hey, we're not supposed to resist, but again, this is when it is actually in line with God's purposes, right? So we have to be careful, because there'll be a lot of people, again, that abuse this and say, well, whatever the government tells you to do, that's what you need to do. If you believe that, I feel bad for you right now. Because that's not what this is saying, right? For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, they're not supposed to be, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, right? So this is referring to kings of the time. For he is God's servant for your good, but if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Now here's the other thing too, is that sometimes God's appointed people, our governments, the people that actually rule over us, are actually judgment as well, which we often don't like to admit. Sometimes it's literally us getting what we deserve, because we've chosen to go a certain way and we've lived a certain way, and it can be judgment as well. So this is part of it, and something to look at. But here we see, like, hey, normally, yeah, you don't resist, right? Like that's kind of the purpose. We see another thing here with Jesus, right? John 2, 13-17. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons and money changers sitting there, right? And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen, and he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, take these things away, do not make my Father's house of trade. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will consume me, right? So here again, we see Jesus resisting evil, right? The temple wasn't meant to be a place where they're exchanging money, where they're selling goods. That wasn't the point. You're supposed to be able to get the stuff you needed to sacrifice, and that was it. And yet they were making tons of money. The funny thing is Kennedy earlier said that we should get, like iced coffee thing out there. And I was like, well, that'd be a good idea. We could become like Starbucks. And they're kind of joking about this idea. Yeah, I'm like, then we could actually sell our coffee. And it could be like really expensive coffee, and we could sell it that way. And we'd make a ton of money off it. And then Jim's like, yeah, and I'll set it up, and you can come in and you can come flip tables. And it would just be just like this, right? But that was the point, is that instead of being a place that was meant for like worship, and for people to come and humble themselves and to get forgiveness of sins, it became a place where it's like, hey, we're going to make some money. So that's our new church money fundraising idea. Anyways, so next week, be ready for iced coffee. Hey, yeah, summertime. So, but you get the point, right? Like there is times where resisting is appropriate. And Acts 22:22-29, up to this word, they listened to him. This is Paul. Then they raised their voices and said, away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live. So they're going to kill Paul, right? And as they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the tribune ordered him to be brought into the barracks, saying that he should be examined by flogging to find out why they were shouting against him like this. So, great way to examine someone, just whip them. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen and uncondemned? So here you see, like, he is resisting, right? He's actually calling out, hey, I'm a Roman citizen. Like, this isn't legal. You're not supposed to be doing this. When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said to him, what are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen. So the tribune came and said to him, tell me, are you a Roman citizen? And he said, yeah. The tribune answered, I brought this citizenship for a large sum, Paul said, but I am a citizen by birth. So those who were about to examine him withdrew from him immediately, and the tribune also was afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him. So they're not supposed to do this to Roman citizens. Paul resists, right? So it's not talking about resisting all sorts of evil. Jesus is speaking specifically about personal retaliation, right? This is the whole point. The kingdom is not built on revenge. He's talking about personal retaliation. And the question is, why do we want to retaliate? Why is that in our nature that when somebody offends me, someone says something to me, someone does something to me, my immediate response is one of, I want revenge. I want retaliation. I want to get them back. Why is that our first response? Did you ever notice that? Like, the other day, I was heading into town. Actually, it was yesterday. I'm heading into town. Right, we had our soccer tournament yesterday. This is why Israel has that fantastic hat tan right now. It's a beautiful day. But I got cut off on my way into town, right? The guy cuts me off. Like, totally just comes out from the one place by BP's there and just cuts right in front of me, almost takes my front end off. And I'm like, I just want to rear end the dude. I'm like, hey. Like, you cut me off, like, and then, or you want to like pass him and get in front of him and like jam on the brakes. Why is that our immediate? Not, I didn't do any of that, but why is that our immediate heart response? Is that I want personal revenge? Why is that? Why is that the first thing that pops up is like, oh, I want revenge. And here's the thing, the world also, it says this, right? Someone strikes you, strike him back, strike him harder, right? And Jesus says, do not become like the one who hurt you. And this is really getting to the heart of the matter, is like, are you then any better than them? And the saying that actually my grandpa used to say a long time ago, and it stuck with me, and I actually say this to my kids and to other people, it's like, do not become like the ones that you hate. Right? And that's really what we're seeing here, is do not become like the ones who've hurt you. You doing the same thing isn't going to help anything. And this is the heart of what Jesus is getting at here, right? It's refusing personal revenge. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, if someone offends you, you're refusing to strike back. You're refusing to offend back. You're refusing to take personal revenge. The natural heart, though, says, I'll make them pay. But why is that? And here's the interesting thing, and this is the same issue actually that we have with patience as well, is that, well, you've done something to me, and since I'm important, then I need to take revenge on you to prove my worth. That's the point. You cut me off. How dare you cut me off? Don't you know who I am? Like, I'm a nobody. Like it matters. But why am I so offended then, right? Why am I so upset? Why do I want revenge? Right? Why do I want to drive by him and tell him he's number one? Right? Like, why do you want to do that? But that's it, right? It's like, if my identity is secure in God, I don't need revenge to prove my worth. And that's what Jesus is getting at here, saying, hey, the reason we're taking revenge is you think you need to prove your worth. Your identity is wrapped up in that. It's, again, a deeper heart issue. That's what he's getting at. Turning the other cheek does not mean pretending evil is acceptable, but it refuses to let hatred control your spirit. It actually takes enormous strength to do that instead of just take revenge. Right? Anyone can lash out in anger. Anyone can strike back. Anyone can take revenge. But not anyone can absorb an insult without becoming consumed by it and wanting revenge and hating that person and allowing themselves to become bitter. Right? And yet Jesus does this perfectly. 1 Peter 2:23. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. Here's the thing. If we actually trust that God is a righteous judge who judges justly, then we let him do it. It's not up to me. Right? And we know that Jesus has experienced all of that. We know that, when he was crucified, he was reviled, he was tortured, he was suffered, he was called all sorts of nasty insults, and yet Jesus doesn't open his mouth. In fact, the thing that he does open his mouth to say is what? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they've done. What a response. Right? So we continue. It says, and if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. Does that not seem odd? Jesus now moves from insults to material loss that, and a cloak was deeply important because your cloak not only you used to keep warm, but your cloak was also the thing you put on the ground to sleep on most of the time. Your cloak was an important thing. And it says, hey, if they take your tunic, well, give them your cloak as well. Your cloak is kind of your livelihood. It's really interesting. And again, we think about, it's my stuff. And again, I haven't had too many times where I've been robbed in my life, but when Beth and I lived in Lethbridge, and we just were out with friends and stuff, and we were playing some ultimate frisbee, and I had my wallet and my watch and my sunglasses. My watch, funny, it said it was an Oakley, but it was a fake one from Mexico, so joke's on them. But my sunglasses were pretty nice, and at that time we were pretty poor, and I finally invested in some nice sunglasses that I really liked. And I come out that morning and about to go to work, and I just before I get in my car, I notice that there's stuff all over the seat. I'm like, and I go in, and my watch is gone, and my glasses are gone, and they went through my wallet, which oddly enough, my wallet had a couple gift cards in it. They went through my wallet and threw the gift cards on the seat. And I'm like, okay, I guess you don't want the gift cards. That's fine, but, again, what was my immediate response? Well, I hope you enjoy my sunglasses and my fake watch from Mexico. No, I was like, man, I wish I could find those people. Man, I wish I could make them pay. Right? It's funny how that is the instinct right away. And the simple heart constantly says that. It's my possession. It's my fairness. And Jesus exposes how easily possessions become idols. And we looked at this morning in Sunday school as well, is that the things we can hang on to it so tightly. And we don't need to. And this is what Jesus is getting at. He's everything is wrapped up in those things, so we get deeply offended. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be bothered when someone takes stuff from you. Don't hear me wrong. All of us are all of us are frustrated and angry when somebody takes stuff from us. I'm not saying that, and I don't think the passage is saying that either. But when our heart immediately turns to revenge, we know there's an issue. right? And that's what the passage is getting at here. We know there's an issue then. And that's what Jesus is trying to expose again, is that heart. Right? That's the whole point. And it says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. This is why I got the soldiers in the background. So back then, there was Roman law that the Roman soldiers could actually force any person that they wanted to take all of their gear and walk with them for 1 mile. And their gear wasn't like light. It weighed a bunch. And they could be like, here, you need to walk with us for next mile. It was law. If you didn't respond to that, they could actually kill you. So it was a bit of an embarrassment. And most people would see that as an embarrassment. Like, if you had to do this, like, it was like, like, gross. We have to do this for the Roman soldiers. This is, they're the enemy. They're the occupying force. We don't want this. But yet, here it is. And yet, Jesus here turns. It's like, they forced you to go 1 mile, but what happens? Well, you go with them 2 miles. Can you imagine the difference that would make? Imagine the soldiers, you're really upset about the fact, but they throw all their gear on you and they make you go 1 mile with them, and you walk that mile and you get to the end of the mile and they're like, I guess, we'll take our stuff back and we'll find somebody else. Like, no, let's keep going. Let's go another mile. And they actually weren't allowed to make you go another mile. But you're like, no, I volunteer. Yeah, I got this stuff. Let's go another mile. Can you imagine how much that would turn the thoughts of those soldiers? When you're like, no, I'm good. We'll go another mile. It's completely backwards to think that way. And Jesus here is saying, hey, no. Go further than required. Do more than what's expected of you. Like, don't seek revenge. This is the natural heart that says, I want to make them pay. No, let's change that and say, what? I'm going to return that for blessing. Like, what? Who does that? It seems crazy. But kingdom people become generous. Kingdom people are willing to bless even when they're insulted, even when they're hated. It's this complete change. And it's like, well, why would you do that? And yet there's more to it yet. It says, give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. And these ones are tough too. Right? And I think this is talking about like legitimate begging and borrowing. If you've ever been to the cities, there are literally people that do scam begging, where they drive up in their nice vehicle, they get out, they put on their homeless stuff, they sit on the side, they collect your money, and then they get back in their car and they go home, and some of them actually make more than the average person does on a day just by sitting there and panhandling, which is crazy to think about. But this is talking about like people that beg from you to have need. When we lived in Pinchin Creek, there was quite a few street people there. And I had one in particularly who every day on my way to work, so I walked, it was a few blocks, I don't know, to get to the church. Sometimes I'd take the path, sometimes I'd take the normal street, but typically I'd run into the same type of people. And most days they would ask me for stuff, right? I didn't typically give money because I knew money was often used for alcohol and other things that wasn't beneficial to them, but I'd always offer to like buy them food or that kind of stuff. But it became tough sometimes, right? Because you're like, and then you look at this verse, but I know there's times where I'm like, you know what? I think I'll take the path today, because if I take the path today, I'll probably miss the guys on the street, right? Because you didn't want to keep doing that over and over again. But again, it's a reflection of your hearts. Right? This is about generosity. And retaliation never gives, right, in generosity. And of course, like, again, this doesn't mean enabling any sort of manipulation or abandoning any sort of wisdom, right? I think we need to discern good stewardship and be wise and know if we're being conned or not conned, but I think this needs to be part of who we are, that we don't hang on to things too tightly. And I think that's part of why retaliation is such a thing, is because we hang on to things too tightly. Right? We hang on to things way too tightly instead of hanging on to them loosely. And you're like, does it really matter? No, it doesn't really matter. But the center of all of this and all of the truth is that vengeance belongs to who? Back expect. It says this all throughout Scripture. Who does vengeance belong to? Vengeance belongs to God, right? We see that. Romans 12:19, beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So here's the other thing with vengeance. Vengeance literally says, God, I don't trust you as a righteous judge. I don't trust you to bring justice, so therefore I am going to administer what I think is just myself. That is what we're doing. We are taking the role of God and saying, I will be the judge, jury, and executioner. Thank you very much. That's what's going on. We seize judgment for ourselves. But we know, like the cross, God takes evil very seriously. Jesus dies in the place for all of evil, for all of our sin. Like Jesus pays the punishment for that. Death was required and Jesus dies in our place. Like God takes evil seriously. We know that. And God alone is the perfect judge and is the perfect one. We know that as well. So who better than to allow to have the vengeance and to judge rightly and justly than God? We entrust justice to God. Again, it's a heart matter. Do I actually trust God and His word? Because when I choose retaliation, when I choose vengeance, I'm saying, no, I don't. I don't trust you, God. And some of us say, well, there's certain people that payment better come quick because they've done enough stuff and I'm not seeing you doing anything, God, so that better come soon. And yet we don't know what God's doing, and in the ultimate, God is going to make that judgment, and everyone's going to be accountable for everything that they've done and said, and we need to trust that. But this is displaying a heart that is lacking trust in God. And really the cross changes how we respond, because we have been shown such great mercy by God that now we become people who show mercy, which really is doing to them what they don't deserve. Because yes, I will admit that some people really deserve, right? Like, I don't remember who originally said the one saying, but it's like, some people are the way they are because they haven't been punched in the face enough, right? Like, you ever heard that saying? Yeah, a few viewers smirking and laughing, like, that's so true, right? But yeah, it's not for us to be that judge, right? But yeah, some people are the way they are because, there's some truth to that. But Jesus didn't merely teach this sermon, did he? He embodied it. He showed us how to do it. He was mocked, he was beaten, he was crucified, right? And we saw in the end, he's like, Father, forgive them. The cross is the ultimate picture of the non-retaliating heart, because here's the thing, Jesus could have called a legion of angels at any time and could have completely destroyed the entire Roman army and everyone else that went with that. He had that all at his disposal, and yet that's not how he responds. He shows great mercy. So ask yourself today, honestly, what wound are you still trying to avenge? Who's that person in your life where you're still like, oh? And we all hold that, right? I remember a kid from grade 7 who constantly bothered me, constantly said nasty things to me. And it took me forever to let that go. I was like, if bad things happen to that guy, in fact, I want to know if bad things happen to that guy because he's finally getting what he deserves. And that was like, you hold this bitterness. And I was like, if I ever see him on the street, like even now, I feel like if I saw that guy on the street, like I probably wouldn't recognize him anymore because it's been a lot of years. But what would I want to do? Would I want to show him mercy? Or would it want to be, one of those guys who he is the way he is because he hasn't been punched in the face, and I want to, encourage that? Like, what would I do? Some of us are still hanging on to those things, right? We're hanging on to those things. That's the other thing, like, whose failure Would you like secretly be satisfied? Do you ever have that where like you're actually rooting for people to fail or be hurt? Or you ever have that where you're like, you know, if that guy like stepped out in front of a car right now, that wouldn't be the worst thing that happened? Right? Like, and we don't want to admit it, and that's why we're all kind of laughing and smirking, because we've all had that thought. It's like, oh, there's that guy that I really don't like. He's standing at the cross. Like, oh, here comes a big truck. You should cross now. And here's the next thing. What bitterness feels justified? You know how sometimes we hang on to that because we're like, no, it is justified the way that I feel. Because of what that person did, because of what they said, because of how they've treated me, I am justified to be bitter towards them. Were you hanging on to that? Jesus doesn't deny your pain. And he doesn't excuse evil either. But he refuses to let revenge become your master. Because it takes over our heart, and that bitterness turns to hatred. And that hatred starts to make us respond in ways that we don't want to respond. And it just builds and builds, that resentment, that bitterness, that hatred. And the thing is, it completely overtakes us. And it might start with just that one person, but you know what? It overtakes who we are, and the way we start responding to other people then is different as well. And it completely changes our heart, and it makes our heart hard and bitter. And this is what Jesus is getting at. He's like, there's a deeper root problem here. One of the greatest ways we can see whether Jesus reigns in our heart or not is the ability to absorb injury without being consumed by hatred. This starts to show a changed heart in us. And this kind of life is impossible through mere human strength, but through Christ, he is the one that strengthens us. And we know that in the end, he will reign justly, and we need to be able to trust him with that. And that's the ultimate sign of a changed heart too, is can I completely trust Jesus with this and not have to do it myself? Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you again that you are so merciful to us. You show us such grace and compassion. And God, I pray that if we're harboring bitterness, anger, hatred in our hearts, Lord, I pray that you would give us the power to forgive, the power to let go, the power to give it to you. And God, I pray that you would change our hearts, that we would trust you, that we wouldn't think that we need to seek revenge and take care of things ourselves, but that we could leave it at your feet and know that you will take care of it, that you will be the one who gives ultimate justice in the end. May we just trust you with that. Trust you at your word. And God, I just pray that you would transform our hearts. I pray that if there's any bitterness or hostility or anything that's being held on to here in this room today, God, I just pray that it would be released. That you would well up forgiveness within us, and that we'd be able to be released from that, as it is just shackling us instead of allowing us to live in freedom. So God, I just pray that you would give us the ability to give it to you and not seek revenge, and be people that are gracious and compassionate ourselves, people that are generous ourselves, and people that are just after your heart and not after our own. May we find our identity in you. And may our worth be found in you as well, so we don't have to prove it through vengeance. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Worship team, I'll make you on